All right, I hate being the bearer of bad news, but if we don't tell you about this stuff, who is?
So what are we talking about?
I'm talking about the U.S.'s biggest gasoline spill that you have not heard of.
So like a gas station, like the tank leak?
Worse, I'm talking about a gasoline pipeline owned by Koch Industries that supplies the northeast of the United States with 45% of our gasoline. The Colonial Pipeline stretches from Texas to New Jersey, and it pumps 2.5 million barrels of fuel per day.
I've never even heard of this pipeline, let alone any leaks. I mean, wouldn't I have seen it being built?
Well, it was built before you were born. In fact, it was built before I was born.
Wait, what? When was this pipeline built? And why haven't I seen it?
It was initially built in 1963, and you haven't seen it because it's largely underground.
Okay, wait. So the pipeline that carries 2.5 million barrels of gasoline a day, that's gasoline, not oil. It's actual gasoline. They built it more than 50 years ago?
Yeah. In fact, the Colonial Pipeline is so old that its anti-corrosion mechanism is simply a coating of coal tar.
Wait, I'm sorry. So the thing that's keeping this steel, not stainless steel, steel pipeline from rusting in the ground is some tar painted on it? But you said something about a leak.
Yeah, back in August, some teenagers were riding their ATVs in a nature preserve outside of Huntersville, North Carolina, near Charlotte, and they noticed gasoline gurgling up out of the ground.
So how much gasoline has leaked?
Well, we're not exactly sure because Colonial keeps changing their estimates. First, it was 63,000 gallons, and then in September, it was 273,000 gallons, and then in November, it was 311,000 gallons. The latest number I heard reported was 1.2 million gallons of gasoline.
Okay. What? I mean, what if these kids hadn't stumbled across gasoline bubbling up from the earth? How would they have found the leak?
Well, as Jared Margolis, a senior attorney at the Center for Biological Diversity, said, the Colonial Pipeline doesn't have the same mechanisms in place to monitor spills and leaks. This is a 40-some-year-old pipeline. It just doesn't have that kind of technology. So Colonial says they have leak detection that can detect a leak as small as 3% of pipeline daily flow. Now, if you do the math, that's a leak of 1.8 million gallons. So they can't detect anything below 1.8 million gallons a day.
Okay, so they're going to shut down the pipeline and fix it?
Well, you can't shut it down because keep in mind, if they shut it off completely, then millions of people won't have gas for their cars. In 2016, a back-to-back spill and explosion did force them to shut down the pipeline for repair, and it caused gas shortages in 6 states. In fact, the governor of North Carolina declared a state of emergency because 70% of North Carolina's gas comes from this pipeline.
And now it's important to keep in mind, because when we talk about oil spills and stuff like that, oil floats on top of water. Gasoline is actually heavier than water. So unlike oil that floats on top of stuff, gasoline sinks. And so all of this gasoline that has been spilling isn't going to find its way to the surface, most likely. It's going to sink into the ground. And if you don't know what's underground, it's the water table. And the water table is what you drink, most likely. And so it's poisoning water supply?
Yeah. And to your point, Colonial decided it was cheaper to buy out 3 of the properties that are affected for $500,000, which, by the way, is more than Colonial has had to pay in environmental penalties levied since 1993. Anyway, they decided to just buy the properties rather than pay to clean it up.
So it's just still leaking into the ground?
We don't know.
And this is why we do this show every week. We need to get off of fossil fuels. I mean, driving any gas car supports this pipeline.
And even though you don't know about it because they work really hard to keep it quiet, every time you fill up at the gas station, you are supporting what these fossil fuel industries do. They cut corners, they poison our environment, all in the name of making a buck. And, you know, there's a lot more to talk about here. I think we should do it on Patreon bonus stories.
Yeah, because otherwise this episode of Tesla Time News is going to be like 3 hours long.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching Now You Know clips.
You can watch full episodes of Tesla Time News on Mondays and in-depths on Fridays. Just click the link down below to head over to the Now You Know channel.